NAR took these latter rain teachings, and essentially they are latter rain teachings that have just been rehashed in the New Apostolic Reformation movement, and really has popularized these teachings.
I want to give people a little bit of a history lesson onto this about this movement itself. So to start us off well, going back to the roots of the New Apostolic Reformation, would you please share an overview of the latter rain movement and how those two intersect?
Sure. Yeah. As you mentioned, the latter rain movement in the 1940s, 1950s, so really the post World War II era. It was a movement that there was revival in Canada, and it really spread though throughout the United States and even throughout the world. A key teaching was fivefold ministry, that God had intended for there to be 5 governing offices for the church through all the centuries. So apostle, prophet, evangelist, pastor, teacher. But apostles and prophets were really the ones that they taught that had been really important offices. They were the highest offices in church government because they bring critical new revelation that all Christians need. And they said that these offices were missing and needed to be restored. So the latter rain movement was a restorationist movement seeking to restore these offices that had supposedly been lost and needed to be restored for the church to fulfill God's will on earth, bring God's kingdom. And part of latter rain doctrine even was a really extreme set of teachings that were associated with manifest sons of God teaching, that believers, by receiving these new revelations from the apostles and prophets, can actually even obtain like a degree of immortality in this life. William Branham was, as you mentioned, one of the leaders in this movement, and he is still highly revered today by many New Apostolic Reformation leaders, such as Bill Johnson and at Bethel Church in Redding, California, which is now the most influential church today in the New Apostolic Reformation movement. But the connection is the New Apostolic Reformation movement has essentially taken these latter rain teachings, which were condemned by the Assemblies of God, and back in the original latter rain movement, when these teachings surfaced, they were quickly condemned. The Assemblies of God put out a position paper, and it kind of forced the movement to go underground. And then what happened was in the 1980s, prophets started resurfacing in independent charismatic churches. In the 1990s, apostles started resurfacing. And by 2001, you had so many of these churches that were embracing apostles and prophets in their governmental structure that C. Peter Wagner declared that 2001 was the beginning of the second apostolic age. And he's one of the most well-known apostles, of course, in this movement who has since passed away. But so NAR took these latter rain teachings, and essentially they are latter rain teachings that have just been rehashed in the New Apostolic Reformation movement, and really has popularized these teachings. So whereas the latter rain movement was really forced underground, many people thought it kind of fizzled out after the Assemblies of God issued that paper, although you can attest for yourself that it didn't go away, totally, but it kind of was forced underground. But NAR has taken those teachings and then popularized them and really spread them on a global scale, and they've received widespread acceptance. So that's a difference, whereas as early the latter rain teachings did not receive that widespread acceptance.
It's so interesting because my dad would have started, I mean, gosh, I think it was maybe the 70s. So it would have been during that underground phase then, right? Which is definitely what I experienced. I mean, very under the radar, duplicitous life. Like, this is who I am in public school and this is who I am at home. And things were very much separated out. And so, yeah, it's interesting. I mean, he passed away in 2007, and it's just interesting for me to reflect on how that really lived out in my life, and wondering those who are still a part of it, because that group isn't gone. I'm just not a part of it anymore. I wonder how this shift in culture and how out loud NAR is, this movement is now, I wonder if that's impacting at all. I could see that feeling like affirmation of something they've been doing for a long time. I could see that being affirming, oh yeah, other people are catching on now, and just really furthering the problems, honestly.
Yeah, and the leaders in NAR are very open that of the connection between the current NAR movement and the latter rain movement.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes they will disavow what they call the more extreme teachings, like the manifest sons of God doctrine, things like that. Although those manifest sons of God doctrines do surface and show up even in some of today's NAR teachings.
Mm-hmm.
One thing that's different is that in NAR, all of this is wedded to this idea that there are apostles and prophets today who have extreme authority within the church, and that's a crucial component to this that I think has helped, and also just some of the other activities and beliefs about being able to activate people in the miraculous and seeing signs and wonders as evidence of the presence of the kingdom of God on earth.
Mm-hmm.
So there are some similarities and some things that are carried over, and then some of these add-ons as well that make it somewhat distinctive as a movement. The NAR.
New language. There's kind of new language, like bringing heaven to earth is a very popular term, popularized probably by Bethel Church in Reading. It's the idea of bringing God's physical kingdom to earth. So that language is kind of new language to talk about kind of the same old latter rain teachings.
Right. So just sort of repackaged.